Kentucky just made upsetting Ole Miss harder for no reason.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media and a former Ole Miss staff member. On today's show, we're diving into some bold comments from Kentucky Sports Radio's Matt Jones. Jones downplayed Vaught-Hemingway Stadium as no big deal, suggesting it will not be much of a factor for Kentucky. But let's be real. Why would you do that? His remark might have just made Mark Stoops' job even harder as they head into Oxford, a 17.5-point underdog. We will break all of that down. And don't forget to find a second listen on the network. Chris Gordy at Locked On SEC and Corey Burton at Locked On Vandy offer other great perspectives around the SEC and college football, even Ole Miss, honestly. So be sure to check them out. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On your first listen every day, and a special hello to the insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place a $5 bet and you'll get a $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So Matt Jones from Kentucky Sports Radio had an interesting take a little bit earlier in the week. And it's not a take that is weird per se, but it's a take that he just shouldn't have made. It shouldn't have happened. That shouldn't have been something that was even possible, was that take from Matt Jones. And that is that Vaught-Hemingway Stadium is no big deal. It's a late arriving crowd. It's not that loud. It's not hard to play in. All of those things came to the forefront in Matt Jones. But here's the problem, Matt Jones. As Bill Flowers said last night, Ole Miss set a stadium record for attendance and 67,500 fans for Georgia's Southern. They're the all-time attended game. Ole Miss fans are really fired up. That is the point. But as far as Ole Miss not being a difficult place to play, let's rewind to 2022 when Ole Miss was not doing the same thing going in there, and it was not a very difficult place to play. Kentucky was driving the ball and a chance to win Ole Miss. This was a top 10 Will Levis-led Kentucky team with a chance to win the game. They throw a touchdown pass that gets called back because of a crowd-forced illegal procedure penalty. The crowd literally had an impact on the last time Kentucky walked into that stadium, and this year's crowd's going to be a lot worse. I'm expecting north of 68,000 fans in a stadium that holds 64,038. This isn't hard. So Mark Stoops is probably looking at what Matt Jones is doing. It's like, what are you doing, bro? Because this is going to be played for all of the students going in there. You wanted a late arriving crowd? Not going to happen now. In fact, I would have thought this was a Lane Kiffin plant going into this game if I didn't see it came from Kentucky. Kentucky has a lot of things going for them, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and they have some pieces offensively to where they could be pretty good. But they're going to have to attack this game at a very slow down the pace, make sure all of that happens, and hope for a game similar to the Georgia Bulldogs game for the Kentucky Wildcats to pull it out without help from Ole Miss. Now, if Ole Miss helps them out, all bets are off there. But this is a game that if Ole Miss plays well and Kentucky plays well, Ole Miss wins by 3 or 4 touchdowns. If this is a game where Kentucky plays well and Ole Miss plays poorly, that is one of those games where you could have a Georgia-Kentucky type thing in the fourth quarter to where this thing is like squeaky bum time. And the other thing is if Ole Miss plays well and Kentucky does not, you're looking at like 52-3 type realm. Kentucky has a really good defense. They have an offense that has struggled over this season. So with Matt Jones adding this extra motivation to the crowd, Ole Miss notoriously, and their fans especially, have an inferiority complex. This will not be taken well. they're going to be in their seats early. They're going to be raucous. It's going to be a stripe out. If you do not have the color you need, head on over to the College Corner off of Sisk Avenue, and they can help you out. It is really important that Kentucky kind of catches Ole Miss off guard. They need that little gap that is there, and everybody points that out. Ole Miss is nearly a 3-touchdown favorite over Kentucky at the moment. They need that gap to shrink, and the way you do that is by Ole Miss not being ready to play, by the crowd being sleepy. All of the things that can help you, Matt Jones basically just single-handedly eliminate it from happening. So we'll see exactly how that goes. Anyway, we have Andrew Stefaniak from Kentucky on SI. We don't have Thunderdome this week because Lance Daw from Locked On Kentucky is more interested in basketball, apparently. I don't know. So we got Andrew Stefaniak, who covers Kentucky on SI, and we're going to talk about all the storylines, including this one right now. Let's go. Andrew Stefaniak joins us, and we are not in Thunderdome, as you noticed, but Lance Dahl, the host of Locked On Kentucky, thinks basketball, I guess, is something that is worth talking about during football season. So we were able to schedule that crossover. So we got Andrew Stefaniak. He is in Lexington, Kentucky. He writes for Kentucky on SI. Did I get the name of that right?
Yep, Kentucky Wildcats on SI, yep.
And they do a fantastic job. What's going on up there. And I was talking before we came in on this break that Matt Jones on his Kentucky Sports Radio show or account or whatever you want to look at that as probably made it more difficult for Mark Stoops to come down to Oxford to pull an upset, because he basically went on and on about this is a late arriving crowd. They're not very loud. It's not a difficult place to play, which, Andrew, it's weird for me. Because the last game, the very last time that Kentucky played in Oxford, Kentucky scored a touchdown that was called back because of a procedural penalty that was set up by the crowd, and Kentucky ended up losing that game. So it just doesn't make sense why that would be said.
You know, to me, I completely agree with you. And I think it's a common misconception about Ole Miss, about playing on the road. It's tailgate, tailgate university, the best tailgates in the world, which, while that is true, I don't agree with the folks that say that the atmosphere there isn't good, because that's just not true. That's just a fabrication. That is not accurate information. And, what frustrates me more is, and no disrespect to Matt Jones, he's really good at his job from my end, but what I will say is I don't get why the platform that he has, he's huge here in Lexington. I mean, he's massive, and why would everything you say is going to get across to it gets to you, Steven. It's going to get to other fan base, other media members, players, coaches. Why add fuel to the fire? Why do it? You're the underdog. You are significantly not as skilled as Kentucky. I mean, not as Ole Miss. Why are you, if you're Matt Jones, I don't understand it. So that frustrates me a tad bit, because now I think it's going to make it even harder for the Cats to go win a game that was already really tough for them to go win.
Yeah, and even if you believe all of the stuff you're saying, even if you truly believe that, why would you say something that would risk not happening? If you think Ole Miss is a late arriving fan base, why not just kind of be quiet and let them be a late arriving fan base? Why stoke this fire? I do not understand that.
It just doesn't make any sense, because once again, you're motivating those late arriving fans, air quotes, to arrive early. Because now if I'm an Ole Miss fan and I'm out on the Grove and I'm having a good old time, maybe I am one of the people that is good. I generally arrive late. But there's a couple, sure, right? Now I'm going to go into the game early. You're motivating them to do the polar opposite. So once again, I don't understand those comments. And it's something that, we see a lot of people do a lot, the pregame hype on things. And it just seems to me like you're just angering other fan bases, coaches, players, media members that's going to motivate that team to play better. And when you're in Kentucky's spot, you don't need that.
Is Matt Jones a person that overall that you take it over the Mark Stoops to Texas A&M stuff a year ago, that maybe that Matt Jones might have something a little bit nefarious by doing this? I know that kind of puts you on the spot a little bit.
A little. That's a tough one. I think Matt Jones he's in Lexington. He's got the people that love him and the people that don't love him. I'll give him credit, man. I mean, he's built an empire. He's done a really good job there. But I do think at times they do have, that they have what they want kind of to happen here, narrative wise. But once again, Matt Jones is a Kentucky guy through and through, and I think he's always going to want what's best for Kentucky, even though I don't agree with his comments here in this instance, knowing that, yes, I think they could fuel the fire against a team that is much, much better than you.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. When we come back, me and Andrew are going to talk about storylines of this Ole Miss Kentucky game. Stick around for that. You can start this season with a big return on FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. It is the place to place a bet on which side of Ole Miss being a 17.5-point favorite over the Kentucky Wildcats in Saturday's game. And the over-under right now, that's the interesting bet. It's at 52.5 points. And Ole Miss would have gone over that number multiple times this season. Really interesting stuff. Actually, they'd have gone under because the over-under went from 51.5 to 52.5. But Ole Miss would have cleared that number one time. So I'm wondering about the over-under and maybe if this isn't an overplay. Now, Kentucky's defense is really good, so maybe that's why they're setting the line where they are. But the over-under number is the one that kind of has my attention right now. So when get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Now back to Andrew Stefaniak. Andrew Stefaniak from Kentucky on SI. Kentucky Wildcats on SI. I have trouble with that one. The Ole Miss one on SI, John Macon Gillespie runs that side. I know that one pretty well, but Kentucky Wildcats on SI, I'll try and remember to get that going. All right, so the game plan in this game, and I've been talking all week about what could potentially happen in this football game, and I think the matchup that everybody is going to watch, and if you want to see what's going to happen, is Ole Miss's defensive line, which has a chance to be very, very good. First rounders all over it, against the Kentucky offensive line that against South Carolina, they completely wrecked that unit.
Yeah. The Kentucky offensive line looked horrendous against the Gamecocks a couple Saturdays ago. And I mean, Van de Griff, the Georgia transfer quarterback, former 5-star, he had less than 0 seconds. I mean, he had negative time in the pocket, it felt like. It felt like the ball was snapped and he was on his back looking at this guy within, boom, snap your fingers. And I'll tell you this, we know who you brought in via the portal over at Ole Miss. We know what's on that defensive line. If I'm a Kentucky fan, that is the number one concern I have heading into this game, because it's very simple. If your O-line can give Brock Vandegrift time, do I think Kentucky's going to win even if they do it? No, but I think they'll hang around. If you give him no time, then that 17.5 points is going to get to 28 very, very quickly on the scoreboard, and Ole Miss covers in this game. So it's a huge key in this game and definitely a concern here in Lexington.
In this game, you have to think that Mark Stoops has a plan that the Kentucky Wildcats kind of mucked this game up to make it look like the Georgia game did a couple of weeks ago. Now, here's the concern that you might have in that. Kentucky is probably the second best defense that Ole Miss is going to see. But Ole Miss is the best offense that Kentucky's going to see. Yeah. So in a lot of ways, you have a little irresistible force and immovable object type deal. I think this is a situation that the tempo can kind of take Kentucky off guard, and Kentucky could look up and it's 14-0 in the first quarter.
No question. I mean, this Ole Miss offense, it's been really good. We know how good Lane Kiffin is at his job. And I mean, look at the numbers so far in the season. I mean, it's been incredible. Jackson Dart's up there, Heisman race-wise for a reason. This Kentucky defense, if they don't get a couple first quarter stops, I see this getting ugly quick, because you talk about the tempo. It's a good point. And you played some slower paced teams early in the year. I think that if you give up a couple first quarter touchdowns and Coach Stoops and this team and this staff looks up at the scoreboard and goes, oh man, we're going to the quarter 2 and it's 14-0. They're not going to like where they are. They want to muck this game up. They want to play this game eerily similar to the way they played Georgia. They fell short there, but that's how they want to play this. They want it to be ugly. They want it to be a football game where you kind of throw up in your mouth a little bit watching it. That's how they win. And so if they look up and it's 14-0 with their lack of being able to push the ball downfield on offense, you're not coming back from 14-0. So they want to muck it up. They want to keep it close early.
Ole Miss's run defense is given about a yard per carry up at the moment. Kentucky's getting a running back, their transfer from Ohio State. He's going to be ready to play this weekend. What does Ole Miss fans need to know about the Kentucky run game and that transfer specifically?
Well, Chip Trayanum, Ohio State transfer, really good player, broke his hand heading into the season. And he was he's the guy. He's the RB1 for the Wildcats. He kind of got hurt during that. Every SEC running back is getting hurt week. We saw right before the season. And, he's a guy who brings explosiveness with shiftiness. He's my favorite style of back. He's the guy that can beat you in every single way. He can run around you, through you, past you, whatever you need him to do. And he was a solid player, and I think he's going to have a great year. The injury it's going to be interesting to see how he comes back from the injury, how he's feeling. But you got some solid players behind him. You've got some young guys. You've got Demi Sumo-Karmbe, a running back on the year. He's got 274 yards. He's running for about 4.6 yards a tote right now. And then you've got Jermaine Wilcox, who's got 133 yards, 7 to carry right now, 7 on the ground per carry. You've got a solid running game. And once again, this is how Kentucky wants to beat you. They are not a downfield team. I mean, I think that Kentucky fans would like them to be, but they just aren't. They are a run the football a million times and play smash mouth football team.
That's weird because the two best offensive players on Kentucky's team is probably Barry and Brown and Dane Key.
It doesn't make any sense. And now here's the deal. Sometimes you just have to change what's going on in your offense based on your defects or whatever, and against South Carolina, that was the pass protection. That could be the issue here. Maybe they want to get vertical, but they just can't. And against Georgia, there wasn't a single explosive play of any kind in that football game. In any kind. It was 4 yards, 5 yards, 2 yards, 6 yards, 4 yards. It was nothing over 15 yards. It was just, dink and duck runs, short passes, stuff like that. But that's, I think, knowing what they have on the offensive line, that's how they want to beat you because they're pretty good at run blocking. It's just the pass protection is horrendous.
That South Carolina game is such an outlier and such a weird thing. And you look at the stats, Kentucky gave up like 215 yards in that game and only 13 first downs. I get that South Carolina had a pick 6, but what am I missing just looking at that box score?
There was a lot of the field position game in this. Kentucky was, once again, your quarterback had 30 passing yards. Good luck winning with that. But there was a lot of the field possession stuff. The pick 6 played a role. But, at the end of the day, I just think South Carolina, they moved the ball when they needed to because they're off, like you said. They had some explosive plays. I have the numbers here. They had a few explosive plays throughout the game to kind of get them in spots where they were able to pick up chunk plays. But top to bottom, it was just a game where sacks and things of that nature led to the Gamecocks getting some solid field position.
All right. Before we take a break and go to this third segment, give me a couple of players on Kentucky's defense that Ole Miss fans might need to know because they're familiar with the Dane Keys and the Barry and Browns and those guys.
So the first name that I'm going to throw at you is none other than Deion Walker, who is an absolute beast. 6'6", about 350 pounds, but he's quick. He's not one of those, you hear 6'6", 350 and you go, okay, he's just there to take up space. Not this kid. He can get after the quarterback. He's strong. He's powerful. He's projected top 15 in many, many NFL drafts right now. He on the year, when it comes to pressure, I want to see exactly how many sacks he has. He hasn't done exactly what you would have expected so far. Yeah, he doesn't have a sack on the year yet, which surprises me because last year he had a substantial amount. But he's a name to pay attention to. Zion Childress is one of the DBs on this team that's had a really, really solid season. He's got a sack. He's got 17 tackles. He's looked really good. So defensively, and then the last one is Jamon Dumas-Johnson, the linebacker for the Wildcats, who transferred in from Georgia. He was really, really good at Georgia. He's just a solid veteran football player. So those are the three guys. And there's more names you can throw out, but I'd say Childress, Deion Walker, and Deion Walker, though, seriously, that is the star circle next to that name because he's a stud, man, and he does a lot well. It's fun to watch him play football.
So it would probably be important if you look at this, I have a very offensive mind and ways that I could make that defense less effective. And if they have the size and those type of athletes, it seems like Ole Miss might want them to go side to side. This could be a jet sweep game.
I agree with that. I think that is a way that you can beat this Kentucky defense. Kentucky, they actually haven't been as great against the between the tackle run game as I thought they would be defensively. They haven't been terrible, but I thought it was going to be, good luck. And they haven't, you know what I mean? I'm not saying they've been bad. They've been elite like I thought they were going to be. And so, if you get side to side on this Kentucky defense and you're able to use that to get upfield, I do see that being a way you could potentially hurt the Cats in this game.
Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen of the day. When we come back, we're going to do our final thoughts on the Kentucky Ole Miss game. It's a stripe out. It should be a lot of fun for Ole Miss fans who are unbelievably going to get there early, right? So we'll see exactly. So stick around for that. Hey, sports fans, let me tell you about Prize Picks. It's America's #1 fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. It's hands down the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you have to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Right now, they have an insane deal. If Caleb Williams throws for just 1 yard, you automatically get a win for every football weekend in September. That's 4 weeks of free W's. Do not miss out because once September ends, the deal is gone. And you can win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Imagine hitting that big payday just by making a few smart picks. I've been trying out Prize Picks, and I've been having a blast. Recently, I picked Tyreek Hill with more than 90 receiving yards and Dak Prescott for more than 268 passing yards, and it was kind of a rush watching it unfold. The best part is your picks doesn't even have to hit. You can still double your money with Prize Picks Flex Play option. So download Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege. That's all one word, and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's Locked On College on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive that $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Now, let's do some final thoughts with Andrew Stefaniak of Kentucky on SI. Andrew Stefaniak from Kentucky Wildcats on SI joining us as always. Let's put the finishing touches on this. All right. Give me 2 scenarios, Andrew, if you would. What's the scenario that Kentucky wants in this game, and what is the worst-case scenario for the Kentucky Wildcats this game?
The scenario they want is what we've discussed a little bit, and it's seriously mucking the game up. I mean, it sounds cliche, but that is what they want to do. This is Big Ten football for Mark Stoops. This is what he wants to do. He wants to ugly this thing up. And if they do that, I think your blueprint is the Georgia game. I don't know if anyone, saw what happened there, but that's the blueprint here, except for you want to come out on the other side of it, winning, not losing. And I just think that Ole Miss's offense is too explosive to do that. I think that you can hold them maybe below what they've done this season and maybe what they're going to do the rest of the season. But I don't know if Kentucky's offense is going to be good enough. So I'd say to have a chance, you got to ugly this football game up. You got to run the football. You got to try and get to the fourth quarter with it being a 1-possession game or hopefully a lead. That's your way of having a chance. Your worst case scenario is if you come out and you give up some explosive plays, boom, boom, explosive plays to the Jackson Dart and the Ole Miss offense to where once again you look up and you go, oh man, there's 6 minutes left in the half and we're down 21-3. Because when you get down like that, it's over. In all honesty, if Ole Miss leads by 14 points at any point in this game, in my opinion, that's ball game. I don't believe in this Kentucky offense to score quick enough to be able to come back. So if you get to a deficit, I don't see a deficit of 14 plus points. I don't see Kentucky being able to come back from that, even if that deficit comes in the first quarter.
So what do you think is your prediction for this game?
You know, I've been very candid. I don't believe – I believe that Kentucky slows Ole Miss's offense a hair, but I don't believe Kentucky's going to score. I've said 28-10 Ole Miss.
On mine, my prediction was 38-10 Ole
Yeah.
Miss. So we're on the Kentucky offense side, we're in about the same point.
Yeah.
Now, before we get out of here, Dane Key and Barian Brown.
Mm.
I understand they have offensive line problems and all of that, but they have to figure out a way to get Barian Brown involved, right?
You got to get him the football in space. He's so talented. What I would do is if I was Barian Brown and Dane Key after this season, I don't know what they're doing, man. I didn't say it, but I said it. I don't understand them because they're both really good. If you're Kentucky, you want to get them the football in space. Dane Key is your better downfield threat, 50-50 ball winner, while Barian Brown is your wide receiver screen, quick slant, push the ball downfield. He's also a dangerous return man, so you're going to want to kick the football away from him in the kicking game. But so yeah, keep the ball away from him on kickoffs.
Ole Miss's kickoffs guy goes through the end zone.
Then that's all that matters.
Yeah.
But you can't you give him a chance, he really can house it.
Yeah, he can hurt you. He did. He hurt Ole Miss in 2022. That was kind of his coming out game.
Yeah. Yeah. So something to monitor, but if the kicker's putting it through the back of the end zone, not a concern there. But that's what they want to do with Brown is get him the ball in space, you know, whether it's a slant, whatever, however you can get him the football where he's running at able to run at full speed, make something happen. That's when he's good because once again, he's not an elite receiver hands wise and routes wise. He's really, really fast and he's really shifty. So if you can get the ball in those hands, he's liable to score every single time, but it's getting the ball in those hands, which is what is the concern. So it'll be interesting to see if they can manufacture some touches, have it almost be like an extension of the run game or something like that.
Before we get out of here, Alabama and Georgia, who you got?
I really think I think Georgia wins, but I think Alabama proves that they are no joke. And it's in T-Town, right? I feel like
Alabama's a home underdog for the first time since 2007.
Oh man, that I did not know. I had not heard that.
Yeah, that's before Ryan Williams was alive.
Yeah, that's funny too. But I think Georgia played as awful as it could against Kentucky. I think they're a really good football team. I think Kirby Smart knows how to get a fire behind his guys. I think this is going to be one of the better football games of the college football season. I think it's close, and I think Bama proves that they're a playoff team and they're a contender, but I think the Dogs win a tight one.
That's a good one. Andrew Stefaniak, Kentucky Wildcats on SI. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen today. Now go check out the Locked On College Football podcast. From NIL deals to the never-ending conference realignment rumors, Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron. You can find a link to Locked On College Football right down below in the description. You don't even need to search. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And also exciting news, you can now become a Locked On Ole Miss insider. It's the best and easiest way to stay updated on all things Ole Miss sports. Anything relevant, we send you text notifications without all of the hassles of message boards filled with trolls. Enjoy a 14-day free trial. Experience the stress-free future of college sports coverage. We're adding new perks as we grow, so do not miss out. The link is down below in the description on YouTube. We'll send you to Locked On College Sports right now. Hotty toddy, everyone.